It is Monday, September 24th, 2024. And that means it's, I think, the third day of fall. And also the return of the Knee Jerks podcast of Eno, Nick, and Big Al. I'm the Big Al of the equation, Al Beaton, longtime Detroit-based podcaster and blogger. And joining me, as always, on this, I guess they should call it circus, is first off our West Coast correspondent, the baby of our podcast. That would be Nick Milanovich. Nick's how things?
Things are going pretty well over here. Nice sunny day in Seattle as usual. And it actually was sunny. I'm not being sarcastic this time. But everything's good out here.
Awesome. And always joining us on the show is the man who knows a lot of things about a lot of things, my partner in crime. I think we've been doing this at 16 years at this point, something like that. And that would be Greg Eno of the Greg Eno Substack is Out of Bounds. Greg, I know you published today. What's up?
I did publish today. First of all, you mentioned circus, so there's three of us. Do we each represent a ring of that circus? Are we each a ring of the circus? We each have our own ring. I am Greg Eno from my Greg Eno Substack. Please subscribe to it, gregeno.substack.com. As Al mentioned, I came out with a new piece today, as I pretty much do every Monday, sometimes twice a week if everybody's lucky. Today's piece was about Andy Dirks, and I think he's doing a fantastic job in the Tigers TV booth. So I wrote about Andy today. And subscribe, please, and also follow me on Twitter at Greg Eno would be wonderful. And you can participate in all the fun sports debates we have there on X, I should say, not Twitter. And, of course, the Knee Jerks on X is at the Knee Jerks. I just wanted to mention that we're not going to have a guest tonight, but we have a couple of things in the works. October the 21st, which is 2 shows from tonight, we will be joined by, this is a fun guy. Al, we had this guy on 5 years ago or so. Actually, I think it was before COVID. John Wing, a funny guy, comedian. We had a lot of fun with John. He's a diehard Leafs fan, and he's also a big Detroit sports fan. He grew up in Sarnia, and he lived in Detroit for a time as well. And he's a big-time Detroit and Toronto sports fan. We'll have a lot of fun with John, and he's touring, and we'll talk about his touring and what have you. That'll be on the 21st of October. But tonight we're going to go guestless, and just the three of us. Lots to talk about Lions and Tigers-wise for sure. And, of course, we're going to play a game momentarily. In fact, we may as well play now a little game we like to call Whose Birthday Is It, Maestro? Everybody knows how we play this game by now. I give Al and Nick a clue or 2 or 3 of an individual whose birthday it is today in the world of sports. And if these gentlemen can get this person's name correct in the first 2 clues, they will be able to find out firsthand how many licks it takes to get the center of a Tootsie Pop. So let's find out.
I thought that's already known. It's 3.
No, it's not known. It
You're a
varies.
cartoon owl.
It varies between 144 to 1,000. So let's see what you guys think. This person made his name in the world of football. Is making his name in the world of football. He's 62 years old today. He is not a player. But a very successful non-player in the world of football, and also a man who has a lot of brotherly love. And I'll leave it there.
And when you say his birthday was again, I'm sorry?
1962, so he's 62 today.
62 today. City of brotherly love. So,
no, he knows about brotherly love. Not the city of brotherly love.
Knows about.
He knows about brotherly love. Brotherly love, yes.
No, I think he's trying to trick us, Nick.
I'm trying to give you a clue.
Well, you stumped me no matter what, but let's see. 62, knows about brotherly love. He probably lost to the Philadelphia Eagles.
I
won
62.
I'm kind
of.
Go ahead. This is just the first clue, so no panic. No panic.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to pass on this one, Greg.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, I'm stumped too.
Problem. Okay, no problem.
Oh, and if you're watching the video of this, by the way, people, I look kind of weird and you see my finger going across the camera because I had to switch to a tablet compared to my computer I have here since I am up north again in the cabin. So I have this horrible view of me on my camera right now. It's angled up my nose, which I hate, but what can you do? So I guess with that, now we got that out of the way. You guys want to start with Tigers?
Sure.
All right. Oh, you guys sound enthused. All right. Well, I'll put it this way. I was looking at the show notes from the last time we talked, and the Tigers were already kind of hot at that point, but they really, actually, I looked in my notes and it said the playoffs are probably not a possibility, a very long shot at best. And here we are, a little over 2 weeks later, talking about it. And if the season ended today, guys, the 82 and 74 Tigers would make the playoffs as the third wild card. They do control their own playoff destiny at this point with 6 games left to play. They essentially have to win one more game than either the Royals or the Twins. And they do hold a tiebreaker off over Seattle, who are 2 games back right now, I believe, because they would lose any other tiebreaker with the Royals or Twins. There's no game 163 anymore. But over the past 10 games, guys, Tigers are 7-3. The Royals are imploding at 2-8. And the Twins and Orioles aren't much further behind them at 3-7 over the last 10. Essentially, the Tigers are playing like they want it, while the other 3 are stumbling around in the dark and may not make. Essentially, I put it this way: the Tigers have a shot at the top wild card because now the Orioles are playing so badly. So I've seen people talk about comparing this to 1987. I've seen people comparing this to 2006. But I don't know about you guys, but this really feels kind of like its own animal. Because 2006, the Tigers were playing like the Twins and Royals. In 1987, the Tigers were supposed to do a lot more, and it was their last hurrah off that crew. And honestly, there was essentially a 2-week best of 7 series with the Blue Jays back then. So, Greg, I'll run with you. Where are you standing on all this right now? What are your thoughts on this amazing turnaround, historic turnaround, actually?
Yeah. This is this is probably the most unlikely Tigers playoff appearance, if they get there, that they've ever had. You can go
exactly
back if you want to go as far back as the early 1900s with Ty Cobb when they won 3 straight pennants. You want to go to 34 and 35 when they won back-to-back pennants in the World Series in 35. Go back to 1940, made the World Series. 45 won the World Series. All those teams were good and were expected to be in the hunt at the time that they were good. 68 was coming off of the 67 near miss. 84 was coming off of 83. 06 was a little bit out of nowhere, but like you said, they were you really can't put it is different because they played so well in 06 up until the last week or so of the season when they blew it. And 12 and 13 they were expected, 11, 12 and 13, 14 they were all those teams were expected to make the playoffs. Yeah. So now you look at this one. 72 72 was coming off of 71. So you look at this team, and I can't. I think you put it perfectly when you said this feels like its own animal. I agree. I can't compare this with anything. I don't know what this feels like. I know that if you want to go outside of Detroit, you can look at the 2007 Rockies, the run they made, fantastic run that they made all the way to the World Series. They finally lost in the World Series, but they had an incredible run to get there. But you also hit the nail on the head, Al, when you said it's not just about getting hot, because you can get hot and not make up a lot of ground. You've got to get hot when the other teams go cold, and that's exactly what happened. You mentioned it. Orioles are cold. The Royals are ice cold. The Twins are stumbling, and that's what has to happen. You go. I think the Tigers are 27-11, which is amazing in their last 38 games. But even 27-11 wouldn't have done it much if the Twins and Royals had even played 500. They probably wouldn't be in this position. They'd be like close, but not really that close. But those teams just completely went in the tank. Now, I kind of was wondering about when the Royals might do this. I didn't think it would be this late and this drastic. I never really bought into them because they were so bad last year. The Twins, and you've heard me say this about the Twins a million times. I can never handicap that club. I can never handicap the Twins.
Right.
They're so volatile from year to year, and in this case, within the same year. I just can't get a handle on the Twins. I never can. So this is what it takes. You get hot at the precise time. Right when the Tigers went 18-9 since like mid-August, the Twins were going 9-18, and that's what it takes to make up that kind of made up 9 games in a month. That's like 1978 Red Sox Yankees stuff, or even I think it was the 54 or 51 Giants that came out of nowhere. I think 51 Giants came out of nowhere, way behind the Dodgers, way behind the Dodgers, and then of course overtook them with Bobby Thompson's home run, and that's what has to happen. You've got to get incredibly hot while the other teams go incredibly cold, and that's exactly what's happened. And I'm with you. I have to put this in a category all by itself because there's nothing really that compares to it, really.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Why we were saying before it was not really feasible they would be able to do this because there were so many teams ahead of them. You had the Red Sox, you had the Mariners, you had the Rays. Let alone the final wild card team, whatever that was going to be. So there was like about 4 or 5 teams they had to jump, which they have, which I am actually stunned has happened. Nick, I know you're the big cynic with the Tigers with us. You've been kind of on I won't say maybe a soft boycott. You've quiet quit the Tigers in a way this year because you were not a Scott Harris fan. So.
Not so quiet to quit. There's nothing I do that's quiet. So,
are you back on the bandwagon? I'll just put it that way.
So it is very different. You know which 2 teams the Tigers remind me of? They remind me of the St. Louis Cardinals from I can't remember which year, but a few years ago they went on a tear in August and came out of nowhere to win the division and get into the playoffs, and they were kind of left for dead. And I think it was Mike Matheny's first year there, and I don't remember which year that was, but they really came out of nowhere. And then the other team that it reminds me of are the Cleveland Indians in the movie Major Leagues that came out of nowhere. So. But the Tigers, I've never seen them. Usually, in late summer, like in August, they're doing well in the season. And August looks like they're going to kind of squander it all. So they usually look like either the Twins or the Royals are looking now like squandering a playoff spot. But I give them credit. The planets aligned on them. The Royals and the Royals and even the Orioles and the Twins are doing lousy at the time the Tigers are sustaining a good, not a win streak, but a winning record. So, and doing well. I think the combination of those 2 things, has made them look really good right now. How you doing, Al?
I'm back. For some reason, my internet died, so I've switched networks here. I'm mumbling around. So, anyway, what did I miss?
I was just saying the Tigers look like the St. Louis Cardinals from a few years ago, and then also the movie The Major Leagues, Cleveland Indians.
There you go. I've seen a few people bring that up.
Yeah, it is kind of that way. It's just thank God nobody's got a cardboard cutout of Chris Ilitch and starting to peel off clothes.
Yeah.
Maybe just remove pizza slices off of a pizza. I think that's okay. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, but what's interesting, I would say interesting, let's put it this way. It's Greg, does Javi Baez getting injured have anything to do with this? There's some people throwing that out there. And if you look at the record with and without him, but then some people say it's not that, it's Parker Meadows, who really has changed the dynamic.
Well, yes, Parker Meadows for sure, no question about it. But there is something, I think, to the whole Javi Baez thing, because addition by subtraction, and I'm not saying they couldn't have gotten hot with him, but it just makes you wonder. And if anything, this should maybe drum up some support for even more so now for buying his contract out. Trey Sweeney he's not Alan Trammell, but he's done well. He's performed very admirably considering that we didn't know who this kid was right before the trade deadline. Part of course, the Jack Flaherty trade with the Dodgers. Made that incredible catch on Saturday that literally saved that game.
Yeah, maybe the season.
He's had a couple of clutch hits. He just seems like he's. That's what's so fascinating too, Al. You talked about how this is kind of its own animal, and you look at it, another aspect of this is that they're the third youngest team in the big leagues right now. It's not like they're full of veteran guys who've been there before, and now they're just all kind of putting it together. Their oldest, their veteran leadership guy is Matt Vierling. He's like 28. I know he was in the World Series a couple of years ago, but other than that, they're just a bunch of kids out there, and they kind of don't know that they're not supposed to be this good right now. And they're just kind of playing with house money, loosey-goosey, and they got, 6 games to go. And, that's the other fascinating aspect of this. They're doing it with just a bunch of kids. It's not even like this is like a team full of stars that was underperforming and now they're kicking it into gear. These are just a bunch of youngsters. Many of whom, frankly, were not on the roster on opening day. Meadows, like you mentioned, Meadows, he's becoming quite a player, both with the glove and with the bat. He's got those incredibly, he loping strides out there like a gazelle in the outfield. And when he turned on that 101-mile-an-hour fastball with 2 outs in the 9th inning, and bases loaded and cranked a grand slam in San Diego to win that. There's so many different games you can point to whenever you get this hot. That was the game of the year. That was the game of the year. And then you point to Saturday's game. That might have been the game of the year. Second and third, nobody out. Tie game, crowd going crazy. Looks like for sure that was going to be a loss. And the Sweeney catch was only the second out of the inning. They still had to get one more. They got it. They win. They get 2 runs in the top of the 10th. They win the game. Those are the kind of games, guys, that you have to win if you're going to go on one of these magical runs like this. Those are the kind of games that have to go your way. Even if that had not gone their way, they'd still be in it, but they wouldn't be on their own destiny right now. They would be, tied. And I think we've already mentioned that they don't have the tiebreaker against the Royals or the Twins, so they have to finish with more wins than both of those teams. But my goodness, you win games like that you really have no business winning. That's what starts to make you wonder if maybe there's something going on here that's a little bit bigger than we believe. Yeah,
it's and I think something else that really needs to be brought up. Is done. He essentially, the vast majority of this run, the rotation has been the Cy Young winner. That's going to win the Cy Young in Skubal. Montero, a raw rookie, in 3 bullpen days. And somehow, this patchwork staff, where they're using openers and bulk relievers, and there's no set closer, and yet they have maybe right now the best pitching in all of baseball. And it may not be sustainable. It probably isn't, but it only has to be sustainable for a few more weeks.
Yeah, Hinch has actually juggled that pitching staff for more than just this season. So that kind of almost doesn't surprise me, because if you think about it, what were you been complaining about with the Tigers even earlier this year as well as last year and a year before? Their hitting stunk. And so the fact that they even won 75 games was more thanks to their pitching. And they didn't even have Skubal really last year, or I'm drawing a blank. Who the hell was on that starting rotation last year? It was just a patchwork staff. So it doesn't surprise me that their pitching staff is doing well this year, holding it together. It's nice. I actually like it that there is, Skubal is out there and you can point to some guy that you can follow, and he's worth checking out the game when he's pitching. But that doesn't. The one that surprises me more is that they actually have guys hitting. that one that one's a new thing because even earlier this year, everybody was like losing their minds with how anemic the offense was up until maybe just before All-Star break. And I think they started warming up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So, but Hinch has been a master at handling the pitching staff, I think.
Yes.
For the last few years.
Definitely. Yeah, and if he may not end up winning Manager of the Year because of what's going on in Cleveland and things like, and a couple, few things like that. But I would not argue with him winning Manager of the Year. And Greg mentioned it. You brought up Sweeney. I looked it up the other day, and in 80 games, Javi Baez was his B WAR, his baseball reference WAR was negative 1.1. Yes, and Trey Sweeney's is 1. He's essentially a 2-game swing in playing like 25 games, which goes to prove to Greg, you don't have to have a star at every damn position. You just need a competent baseball player sometimes, and that having a competent baseball player is a massive upgrade when you have a black hole at shortstop.
Right, exactly. And Sweeney, I'm looking. I've got his numbers up right now. In 100 exactly 100 plate appearances, he's got an OPS of 720. I mean, hey, it's not great, but it's not bad for a kid who's 24 years old. He's got 4 home runs and 93 at bats. That's like a home run every 23 at bats or so. That's not bad. I mean, it's not bad. And with the glove, I don't know that Javi is all that much better than Sweeney.
Not anymore.
I don't know if Javi makes that catch, for example, Saturday night that I was talking about. And so I mean, it's. I think that I know we kind of laugh about it, but I really think there is something to the no Javi thing. I mean, and I don't think it's just coincidence. I mean, it's not the only reason they got hot. I'm not suggesting that.
Right.
But I think it's part of it. I mean, I think part of why they're doing so well is they don't have that black hole in the lineup with Javi's bat, and I don't know. I just think that once you get in the situation where you've got so many youngsters that are contributing, and they're kind of wide-eyed and they're just kind of taking it all in. I think sometimes I know when we were together a couple weeks ago, I said that there's one thing I wish they had was that veteran presence to kind of that guy, that kind of that Yoda in the clubhouse. But I'm kind of thinking now without having that kind of a guy, it's okay. I think in this case, in this particular snapshot, this is a small sample size here. I think it's okay to not have to have that guy. I think in this scenario, I think Hinch is that guy. I think AJ Hinch becomes that guy in this particular scenario. I know he's not a player, but AJ's been there before. He's won a World Series. He's been to a million playoff games. I think that having him at the helm helps. Now, if they had like a rookie manager as well, I don't know. Yeah. But when you've got a guy that's been around the block manager-wise, maybe you can get away with not having that veteran Yoda guy in the clubhouse. I don't think they need that now. I think they're feeding off of each other's energy and their youth. And I don't think they miss having somebody like that. I think they're completely fine the way they are. They have I know it's going to be disappointing for the fans if they don't make the playoffs at this point. I understand that. But still, even if they don't, I'm not going to sit here and say, well, they should have if they had a veteran guy, they'd make it. No, I think they're okay the way they are with their current makeup, because I just think they're just having a lot of fun, bunch of kids having fun. And if it works out and they make the playoffs, great. If not, well, guess what? They've cast a die for the future that maybe they've got something. Not every one of these kids that we're talking about is going to make it. They're not every one of these guys, even Sweeney, we don't know for sure, but they're right now. And you mentioned a couple seconds ago, you said this may not be sustainable pitching wise, but it only has to be sustainable for a couple more weeks. Same thing here. This veteran presence thing, throw it out the window. They just have to just go out there, keep having fun. It's worked for the last month. Why can't it work for another couple of weeks?
Yeah. Nick, the youth on this team is ridiculous. I mean, I have the roster up. You got Jace Jung playing majority of the time at third base. You got Colt Keith at second, Trey Sweeney at short. None of those guys were even believed. Well, Colt Keith was going to be the starting second baseman no matter what, but the other two, there was no sign that they were going to come up. Look at the outfield. You got Justin Henry Malloy. You got Winfield Perez. You got Parker Meadows. Hell, Riley Green's just a baby, for Christ's sake. Right. it's crazy that, I mean, look at even the guys they brought up for the bullpen, like Ty Madden, Brent Herter. I mean, where in the hell what's the guy I'm trying to think of? Sean Gunther. Where in the hell did Sean Gunther come from? And all of a sudden, this Sean Gunther is getting clutch ground ball double plays and things like that. This might be a once in a lifetime thing for us, Nick. Seeing this kind of a team that should know better but doesn't, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's kind of reminding me a little bit of the Lions and not the Pistons, Red Wings.
Mm-hmm.
They're starting to come into their own like late in the season, and starting to play really good ball, winning games, and the hope actually for next season would be whatever happens this year. I don't think they're going to go to the World Series this year, but if they get a taste of the playoffs and hopefully develop that chip on their shoulder that they need for it to carry them into next season, that would be great.
Right.
You don't know if this is just by dumb luck they're playing well and then the other teams are just kind of imploding all at the same time, but hopefully it gives these guys confidence for next year. I was thinking about the whole veteran presence thing. Javi was the veteran presence, he wasn't the right veteran presence for these guys. The guy you want is with a veteran presence is if these guys are riding high and all of a sudden they hit adversity, and the playoffs are going to hit the better teams. They're not going to be playing the White Sox come playoff time. And they're going to be playing the Yankees. They're going to be playing – they might play Baltimore. They might play whoever the hell is Houston. And they're going to be running into buzzsaws. They're going to have games that they're going to lose. Because Houston is a veteran team. They know how to win. That's where a veteran would come in and say, "Okay, don't panic. Fine, we lost the game. Let's move on. Next, there's another game coming up. We're not dead." So that's where I think they would come into play with like a bunch of young guys. Mm-hmm. Especially, at playoff situations, like even more intense than like say 162 game regular season. So, but no, it's and it's nice to see that they are young. That you kind of hope it carries on, and some of these guys really are part of your roster of the future. So, but I said this in the last. Our last episode is like, I don't know what this team is. I don't know what they're going to be next year. I have no idea. You cannot extrapolate this season into next season at all. You're kind of like going out on the limb doing that. But they're playing really well. They're playing good baseball. They're winning. Enjoy the ride. For sure. That's it. Just enjoy the ride. It may blow up in their face next year, or they may do even better. Who the hell knows?
It's I think that's a great point though, Nick, that nothing we can take from these last 6 weeks we can take for granted next year. Like I said, a few of these guys maybe end up back in the minors. Things change so quickly in baseball. Let alone you would hope that I would hope that Chris Ilitch would now say the time is right to spend, because hell, he's got a team on the verge of making the playoffs. And Greg, I think it's worth noting. Now, you wrote about this today. You published this on your Substack about the broadcast, because I know we have railed about the Tigers broadcast for quite a long time. I always thought that that Mario Mpemba and Rod Allen were league average at best. Replacement level. You know what I'm saying? Or Mario Mpemba is a professional broadcaster, but I don't think he's anything special. And then they hired Matt Shepard after the incident that the two of those guys had, brought in Matt Shepard. Matt Shepard was just essentially a good hand. That was like a reward for the things he had done for Bally's and Detroit sports in general. And he sucked at play-by-play. And honestly, his colormen didn't help any either, especially Jack Morris, who was, casually racist Jack Morris, I guess is the best way to put that. Now we got Jason Benetti, and over these last few weeks, we've got Andy Dirks. And Andy Dirks, Greg, has kind of come out of nowhere. He started on the radio last year, mainly doing home games with Dan Dickerson. Bobby Scales is doing the road games. That's kind of stayed like that this year. But now he's crossed over into TV, which you wrote about. And him and Benetti are like peanut butter and jelly during this run. And it's like, I think you nailed it in what you wrote about it, is that they kind of get each other because they're the same age. When Benetti is like, 25 years younger or more than the usual gang that they trot out for the Tigers, like Gibson and Dan Petrie and all that. So I've been able to watch quite a few. I'm making a point to try and watch the Tigers games. And I'll listen to them if I can't, but I've been trying when I'm up here. The internet's kind of spotty. But Benetti and Dirks have been an absolute joy to listen to. I hope that they're able to make this work onto next year and just right if those two, because they've been entertaining as all hell. And I'll just add this: as much as I love Kirk Gibson, let him right off into the sunset. He doesn't need to do broadcast anymore.
Yeah, the thing that compelled me to write about Dirks was I've been listening to him the last week or so, and it just seems to be really it just seems to come easy for him. He's not out there trying to be he's not trying to be a broadcaster. And it's hard for me to really put into words what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. He's not trying to be a broadcaster. Yeah. To me, he just seems like he's just watching the game with Benetti. And I made the comparison. He's like the guy who's sitting next to you at the bar, who's watching the game with you. Only he happens to be a former big leaguer who has this knowledge that you don't have, but he's not injecting it in a pretentious way where I'm the big leaguer. He's this guy who happens to have played in a lot of big games himself, and he kind of knows what it's all about. And you mentioned the age thing. He's only 38. Yeah. And so he gets a lot of Benetti's kind of obtuse references sometimes, but it's not just that. I just get the impression that Dirks is there like you or I or Nick would be watching the game with Benetti, and he's injecting his expertise. That's what he's supposed to do, of course. Yeah. But he's not trying to tell us what the next pitch is going to be every time. He's not going crazy with spin rates and launch angles and exit velocity. He's just talking about the game. That you mentioned that Trey Sweeney play. I use that as an example in my piece. Yeah. That Trey Sweeney play. Whereas I think the Gibsons, the Petries, and the other guys of the world would have just tried to analyze the actual play, which I understand that it's a great play. But Dirks went beyond that. He talked about how it sucked the air out of the building in Baltimore, and how the crowd was just went silent. He was almost kind of taken aback by that, and it was genuine. It was just a real reaction. He wasn't trying to analyze anything. He was just bringing it to bear what he was experiencing in the ballpark. And that's the kind of stuff that I think is missed a lot with these analysts. They get so caught up in, I've got to be the guy that's the expert. So I've got to give an expert analysis of every single thing that goes on in the field, including that play by Trey Sweeney. So I've got to break it down to death, because they're going to show a million replays. So if every replay they show, I've got to say something about this play. Well, Dirks said what he needed to say, and then he talked about the crowd. He talked about the energy in the building going away. And that's the kind of stuff that I don't think that Gibson or Petrie or any of those guys would have done. I think they would have just analyzed the play to death. And so those are the kind of things that I'm talking about with Dirks. He doesn't seem like he's trying to be a broadcaster so much as he's just trying to kind of help you along as you're watching the game with Benetti. I mean, it's really hard for me to put in words what I'm experiencing when I'm listening to him, but I just know that I like what I'm hearing, and it's refreshing. It's refreshing. Yeah,
it's like they finally stumbled on a mix of two guys that they could just roll with for a decade or two. Yeah, Yeah, and Nick, I don't know about you, how you feel about this, but I find it refreshing that they're finally moving on broadcast-wise from the 84 guys. I don't know about you, but I've had kind of enough of hearing from the guys of that era, and I want to hear input from younger men who are more familiar with today's game.
So I haven't seen many of those broadcasts. I have watched a couple of the games this year, and I think I've listened to Petrie and Benetti a couple of times. And honestly, I didn't hear much analysis from Petrie, but I also didn't hear. It sounded like two guys drinking beers and watching a game at home. It was that kind of like lame. I thought it was lame. Listening to the two of them, it just sounded like stupid things. I'm not a part of this conversation kind of feel. Yeah. I think, Greg, what you're describing is not just kind of doing a little bit of color on, what happened in the play, but also trying to give you a vibe of, what's going on there and extrapolating beyond the play itself. Like, especially if, certain, a tense situation and all of a sudden your team is up to bat and it doesn't go your way. And then the crowd just kind of hushes, that's kind of a vibe beyond just the literal action. So, but yeah, I didn't notice, and like I said, the few games I saw, I didn't notice any of that. I just kind of got tired of listening to their crap. Yeah, to be honest. And I see it very indirectly, and I see people talking on Twitter a lot about the announcers, and I'm like, it's just musical chairs with these guys. Like, you can't kind of find semi-competent pairs to just put in a booth and announce the game. Yeah. So it sounds like it's so bad that people comment because it's irritating them versus, probably the best case scenario is like, okay, you're cool with listening to these two guys. They're not the ones that are going to draw you to watching the game or not, but, at least they don't make it worse, Right. So yeah.
Yeah, and I know the other thing noticed, Greg, with Dirks and Benetti is that they're on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it now, and they're often posting a little pregame video. And I saw Andy Dirks posted a postgame video after last night's game of him just walking through the tunnels of the bowels of Camden Yards and just talking about just a little bit of opinion about the game and telling fans that better get your asses out to Comerica Park, which I couldn't see Dan Petrie doing that.
No, right. And I'm glad you mentioned that. I didn't touch on that in my piece, but you're right. That goes along with that whole age thing. They're more in tune with social media, they're more in tune with technology and so forth. And that's why I said sometimes Benetti, sometimes his references go over those guys' heads, and it's like it's like he's like their son or nephew, and they're his dad or uncle in the booth. But with Dirks, they're more on even ground, and you're right about those videos pre and post game, and you're right about I know what you're talking about. I saw the video of Dirks just walking through the tunnels. You're right, and you're right. You wouldn't have seen Dan Petrie do anything like that. It's not Dan's fault. No fault of his own.
They're a different generation.
Right, Dan's almost 70 years old by now. So it's it's and I'm not. Hey, I'm 61. I'm not gonna. This is another one.
I wasn't going to say, but no.
From one boomer to another, I understand that, that there's definitely the younger generation has a different grasp on this kind of stuff. And that's good. I'm glad you brought that up. That's another good point, is not just the broadcast itself, but that interaction with the fans indirectly through these videos. Right.
Right. And I guess before we move on and talk a little Lions, we do need to mention that the Tigers, I should say, did make a roster move not long before we went live tonight, and that was the one thing they've been lacking in the bullpen, guys, has been a guy who can miss bats. They have guys who throw strikes, and they have guys who they don't walk people that often, but they also don't get a lot of Ks. And sometimes that's what you need out of your bullpen guy, is you just need someone who can miss bats. And they're going to try that. They're bringing it to, as of tomorrow, the Tigers are calling up their top pitching prospect. He's the number 2 prospect in their program. He's actually the number 6 prospect in all of Major League Baseball, and that would be Jackson Joe. He's going to pitch out of the bullpen for the final week, even though he is a starter. He started all year at Double-A. And Double-A, he was lights out. I think he had an ERA of around 2. In about 80 innings or so. He's pitched very, very well at that level, and he's had a couple of AAA starts. But they're bringing him up, and they have DFA'd Shelby Miller, and I won't say he was the odd man out, but he was kind of the guy you brought in when things were pretty much out of reach, if you know what I'm saying. And he will be eligible for the postseason if the Tigers do get there. All the Tigers need to do is petition the commissioner's office to add Joe as a replacement for an injured player. That injured player of the Tigers is Sawyer Gibson Long, who's on the 60-day DL. And we've seen this with other teams before. So Joe, if the Tigers make it to the wild card round, or they make it, and they're playing on Tuesday, Nick, they're going to have Jackson Jobe, and they really are. I think they realize this is the one last thing we really needed out of the bullpen is a guy who can get strikeouts.
Isn't that always the case with the bullpen, though?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You always want somebody like that. Yeah. I mean, okay, I'm always tempering my excitement on anything. Like, okay, he's a rookie. He's going to either do really well or not do well, or somewhere in between. Like I remember Verlander being brought up when rosters expanded, and he got nailed, that in September, but come the next year, he was doing well, and I think it sounds like they're just bringing in Joe slowly, just like get a taste of what it's like to be out here, pitch to major leaguers and see what that's like and see the major league game. So it sounds like, it's part of it is also his development. And I haven't been keeping track of anybody in the minors. Like I usually don't have time to do that. But so I don't have a feel for like how well he was doing in the minors, but I assume it was doing very well.
He was.
They're going to actually put him on a possible eligibility for a playoff spot. So.
Yeah, Greg. I don't know about you, but I think this was the last thing I expected to hear was Jackson Jobe being on the big league team that's on this final week of the season.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of this. On the one hand, you want to give you want to give them high marks for I don't know if for making kind of a bold move like this. I don't know if it's how bold it really is. We don't know how many games he's going to get into and what kind of if he's going to be put in high leverage situations or not. But one thing I would temper my excitement a little bit on Jobe is that if there's anything that scares me about him is his command. He's not a low walk guy. I mean, if anything, he's a high walk guy. I mean, he's going to average 4 to 6 walks per 9 innings, at least in the numbers I've seen, and that's not good. And so, especially if you're going to come out of the bullpen, you might be able to get away with that a little bit as a starter if you're going to be throwing 5 or 6 innings. Maybe you can pitch around walks when you're starting. But when you're coming out of the bullpen, you're going to start walking guys. I mean, I'm not saying that's what he's going to do, but if you look at his numbers, he had 2 starts in Toledo, which weren't very good. And I know that's, again, small sample size. Nick mentioned Verlander. Verlander stunk it up in 05. That's true when he first came up, but he was 22 years old and whatever. Those were low leverage situations. This is high leverage. On the one hand, I commend the Tigers for not playing scared with this kid. And if they're bringing him up, to me, they're bringing him up with the intention of pitching him. And if they're pitching him, it's likely going to be in some sort of high leverage situation because these games are so important now that will there be likely a blowout in these next 6 games that they're going to put him in? Maybe, but I'm guessing they're bringing him up because they know there's a good chance they're going to bring him in the 7th inning with men on first and second and 1 out. And, in a game when you're trying to either hang on and win or keep close and win or whatever. And so this is not, pitching Double-A Erie anymore. This is the big leagues in the final week of the season going for a playoff spot. So I don't know if I don't know. On one hand, I want to give them credit. On the other hand, I say, what the hell are you doing? But, on the other, I do tend to lean on these kids are not fragile. They shouldn't be fragile. They should, if he goes out there and sinks up the joint, it shouldn't ruin him. And that's the other thing I'm sick of hearing. Oh, it's going to ruin him. No, it's not going to ruin him. These kids are tougher than you think they are mentally. And I'm getting kind of tired of them being babied as if they're so fragile mentally that one bad outing is going to ruin their lives. It's not. But from a baseball perspective, it's either going to be brilliant because nobody really knows him. He's going to come in and none of the batters he's going to face are going to know anything about this kid except from what they read or get from minor league scouting reports. Like Nick said, though, he's either going to go out there and mow them down or he's going to get lit up. We don't know. One of the two. And we'll see. But it is news for sure. It's a big deal. And they're not doing it for show. This is not to let's bring the kid in so he can sit in the bullpen and get a feel for the big leagues, sitting there not warming up. No. He's going to pitch. And he's going to pitch in a situation where it's going to be important that he gets outs.
Yeah. And I think the one other thing that's worth mentioning first, I'm sorry, Nick, but is Chris Fetter. A lot of these guys in the bullpen right now had mediocre numbers in AAA.
Right.
And now they're being used in absolute, critical, possibly season-ending situations, and they're getting outs. And I think maybe that's what they're hoping, that Chris Fetter will be a little Chris Fetter magic in there.
Right. Sure. Of course.
I'll add one more wrinkle in there that I didn't think of at first. They play 3 games against the White Sox. So that could be like pretty much on par with the minor leagues at this point. So
and that's also worth bringing up, Nick. I kind of forgot about that. Is that I know there was a segment of the fan base remembering what the Tigers did when they were this close to breaking the Mets record for losses.
Right.
And I think they ended up winning 5 of 6 to end the season and end with 119 losses.
Right.
I believe the White Sox hit 120 yesterday.
Right.
So odds are they'll get that record breaking loss sometime in the next 3 days, I would think. Right. So I think that's something at that point. I think the White Sox are an absolute mess. And what's actually hilarious is that they should have hired AJ Hinch, and they ended up going with the old man of
La Russa.
Yeah, exactly. And now
La Russa's teams didn't do that bad, though.
What's that? I'm sorry?
La Russa's teams didn't play this bad or anywhere near that.
Yeah, exactly. But it's one of those things that's and that's the thing. The Tigers have probably the easiest schedule of all the wild card contenders at this point. And the way these other guys the other teams are struggling, I mean, the top wild card is not out of the question, being 4 back with 6 to play, and the Orioles playing as badly as the Twins and the Royals are right now. So it's going to be a wild week. I guess that's the best way to put it at this point. Anything else you guys like to add about the Tigers before we get to the next question of the birthday game?
Nope, I think we covered it.
We're talked out on the Tigers, at least hopefully in 2 weeks when we meet again. We're talking about playoffs. So fingers crossed and all that. All right, Greg, the floor is yours for question 2.
Question 2 for the Tootsie Pop thing. This person, football, 62 years old today, not making his name as a player, but on the sidelines. Brotherly love, also fatherly love, because his father was a coach, and did indeed coach in Philadelphia, but not as a head coach.
Wouldn't be talking about John Harbaugh?
We would be talking about John Harbaugh.
Yeah.
Absolutely. John Harbaugh, 62 years old today. And absolutely, John Harbaugh, brother of Jim Harbaugh.
The same Harbaugh
brother. Yeah. Right. But he's one up on Super Bowls over his kid brother.
Yeah. Yeah, what we're talking about. Okay, so what's the answer? Are you gonna? I'm gonna get this like FedEx or something.
Well, you're gonna actually be able to just have as many Tootsie Pops, Al, as you want to try to determine how many licks it takes.
Does this include the dental bills?
Right, I didn't think about that, but no, John Harbaugh he coached defensive backs for the Eagles. And he was a special teams coach there for 9 years. I didn't know he was with the Eagles that long.
No, I didn't either.
It
feels like he's been with Baltimore forever at this point.
Right, exactly. I think he replaced Brian Billick. I think. Let's see. He was.
That's a blast from the past.
He coached. He's been the head coach of the Ravens since 2008. Yeah, since 2008.
Gee, 2008. Good Lord, that's a lifetime in the NFL.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
Oh, hey! Speaking of Harbaugh's, Nick, did you watch the Michigan game on Saturday?
I did not. I was tied up all weekend long, so I did not.
Oh my God! I did.
But I was. I hung around 2 USC fans during that time.
Oh, oh, that must have been fun for you then.
I had no problem with it.
And while we're talking college football, Greg, your alma mater, what are they? What? 2-1, 3-1 right now?
3-1.
Yeah.
They shut out St. Francis 36-0 on Saturday. 3-1. Good start for Chris Creighton's and the boys. Good stuff. 3-1.
And only losses for Washington. So
right on the road in Washington. That's right. And so good start for them. And so we'll see.
What a hell of a sports weekend, wasn't it? Except everybody but the Sparty fans, essentially. The Sparty blowing that game at Boston College. That game they should have won. But no, that was your typical Sparty no game. I think if you know why Sparty no, you know, if you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Not that sounded very convoluted. Anyway,
I never pay attention to them. They're not living rent free in my head. So
he's quiet with the Spartans as well. So anyway, oh God. Anyway, okay. Time to talk a little. Well, before we get to the Lions, let's just get the Red Wings out of the way real quick, because I know on the last we've been asking this we asked Ken Cal this. When are they going to sign their two young players that they have to sign? Will it be long-term? Will it be a bridge deal? Well, we got that answer, guys. On the verge of training camp, the Red Wings signed both their top restricted free agents to long-term deals. Forward Lucas Raymond, who put that team on his back at the end of the year last year, offensively. He signed an 8-year deal with an average annual value of just a hair over $8 million, about $8.1 million a year. And not long after that, they're like, oh, what's going to happen to Mortiz Seider? No, their number one defenseman. And he agreed to a 7-year deal with an average annual value of $8.55 million. Both of these, you could argue, are probably on the lower end of market value. These are market value contracts, but these are both contracts, guys, that are going to look very, very good as the cap goes up. Because if they had signed the bridge deals and they may have gotten them cheap for like 3 years, their next contract would have blown their salary cap out of the water, where they would have been paying $12 million, $13 million a year for these guys. So, Greg, I'll go with you first. About damn time. And actually, once again, Steve Yzerman did it again contract-wise with, I think, a deal that everybody seems to be happy with.
Yeah, he does. He tends to do that. It's we knew it was going to get done, but yeah, this is great. I mean, this is what they need to do. Now this is the first time, really, since this whole rebuild thing started, where they've really now landed on 3 players that they're going to build around. Before it was kind of trying to hunt for those guys, signing a lot of patchwork people, fill-in people, veterans, guys that were really going to be the core. Now you got 3 players who for sure are going to be around for several years. That these are for sure the 3 guys that Yzerman's going to build around for sure, and they're going to be here, and we're going to see them grow up. We already know what Larkin's like, but we're really going to see what Raymond can become. We're going to see what Seider can become. They're 3 very different types of players, which is kind of exciting. Of course, one's a defenseman. Larkin is different than Raymond and vice versa. But this is great. It's out of the way now. We can focus on hockey. Of the 3 that we're talking about here, Raymond to me is the most intriguing. You may say, well, why not Seider? Well, I kind of know what Seider's going to be. I think I kind of felt like I knew what Seider was going to be when I first saw him his rookie year in 21-22. Raymond has kind of grown up, I think, as his career's gone on. And when you think about it, Raymond had kind of a sophomore jinx year in 22-23. Wasn't great. Last year, he was a lot better. He basically put the team on his back the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season. He certainly was one of the few players who stepped up when Larkin went down. I think Raymond's the one who I'm really eager to see how he develops. I don't think there's much we don't know about Seider. We know he's going to be a strong defender. We know what he's all about. Can he get bigger and better? Yes. But I think we basically know what he is. Raymond, I'm not so sure. I'm not, and when I say I'm not so sure, I don't mean that I think he's going to regress. I'm not sure what his ceiling is. I don't. He strikes me as a kind of a player, guys, who we still may not know how good he's going to be. This may be one of those things where 3 or 4 halfway through this contract, maybe when we really this guy's outstanding. When he gets to be like 26, 29 years old, when he's really halfway through this contract now. He might be like one of the top elite players in the whole league. I mean, that's the kind of thing he's got. I think he's got something about him. There's an edge about him. There's a big game thing about him that I like. I feel like he's the kind of guy that can score big goals at big times. And I just think we're scratching the surface on what he can be. I think Seider and Larkin we know, but I think there's a lot more there.
Yeah. Yeah, Nick, what's your thoughts on the I guess the final planks of the platform, so to speak, being put in place of these guys finally being signed?
It's nice. It's nice that they got them on long-term contracts versus putting a Band-Aid on it this year and then kicking the can down the road.
Exactly.
Kind of with Greg. It's like, okay, so Raymond is only like 22 years old now, so he's really still a kid. Which means he came in at 19 when he was first playing for Detroit, something like that. And his is more like a Seider's kind of performance is more obvious. Like in the very beginning, he won Rookie of the Year. You could see he was already mixing it up as a very young kid defenseman. Raymond was kind of like a little more gradual, quiet, and then, last year when Larkin went down, I agree with this, is like all of a sudden Raymond stepped it up. It's like, whoa, he can kick it up. Yep. And he's been, even when he was kind of like maybe struggling to score early last year, he was scrappy the whole time. You put him out there, he's like a ball of energy the whole time. So, are you risking something signing Raymond for that long? Yeah, you probably are. I mean, I think any kind of 8-year deal on anybody is a risk. Just ask the guy who signed Miguel Cabrera to those long deals. Like that.
But he's only 20. He's only 22 now, though. I mean, he's only getting 30. Right. He deals over with.
That's right. Unlike Cabrera, who was 30 when he got the deals, and so yeah, and that kind of contract could age well. What if he's a superstar and he's like 28 years old? Then it's a good-looking contract, and you're not paying him $12 million a year. You're not crippled with under the weight of the salary cap. So, and it's not because Raymond is like fighting to play and compete all the time. That's the kind of guys you don't necessarily always find. And so, I think they did a great job to tie up Seider. Now these guys can focus on, improving their game and trying to get the Wings into the playoffs. And so, and I hate to use the phrase because it's just been overused, but it's a core, right? It's a core of players. Like, okay, we know these guys have some potential. We're going to build around these guys. So,
Yeah, and the one thing I would add is that of the guys that they have on the roster currently, especially the younger guys, Raymond has the biggest chance, I think, of becoming that impact player that this team really, really lacks. They have a lot of good players. They're missing that one guy who is essentially stirs a drink. And of the guys they have right now, I think he's the one with the talent to do it. Can he? I don't know, but we saw signs of that at the end of last year when he was the offense for this team. So
I just think that with Raymond, I think that there's an intangible with him. He can score 30 goals. He'll probably score 30 goals often, and I think he'll continue to produce that way. But I just feel like with him, and I know I'm basing it. I have not seen him play he's played for 3 years. He had a kind of like I said, down second year. He wasn't great. He had 17 goals. 28 assists, wasn't great. First year, good. Third year, very good. And I just feel like this guy, though, there's something about him. There's an edge. There's a flair for the dramatic. I think he's going to show up for the Red Wings when they need him to show up. You don't do what he did last year as a fluke. I think I think he thrives on that stuff. I think he's going to score a lot of big goals for this team going forward, whether it's in the regular season or in the playoffs. And even though he's a low penalty, I'm not saying he's a high penalty minute guy, but I think there's an edge about him. I really do. And I think he's one of these kids that as he grows older, grows into his body a little bit more, gets a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. It's like Eisman was. Eisman was shoved around his first 3 or 4 years in the league. Even when he was scoring 50 goals, he was being shoved around. He got bigger, got stronger, and I kind of you didn't need those goons to help him anymore. And I think Raymond is the same kind of player. I think there's an edge about him that I like. There's something about this kid that just I think is special, and it doesn't show up all necessarily in the box scores or on the scoring sheet, but there's something about him that I think is special, and I'm really glad that's done, and he's going to we're going to see him develop and grow. Because we haven't really done that. We haven't been able to really do that with a Red Wings player. If you go back when the team was great and then winning Stanley Cups, making deep playoff runs, these were all old guys. They were all, Brett Hulls of the world and Robitaille, and everybody was old. We haven't really seen, with the exception of maybe Datsuk, going from young and Zetterberg, going from young to old, and Lidstrom to it, but still, that's only 3 players out of all those years of seeing them grow from kids to Hall of Famers, essentially. Even though Zetterberg is in there. And Raymond, I think, is the next example of a kid we're going to see. And Nick mentioned, 19 years old when he was a rookie, all the way through into his 30s, wearing the wing wheel, scoring hundreds of goals and big goals. And by the time that contract's over with, I think he's going to be one of the top 5 forwards in the NHL. I mean, he's got that kind of potential. I don't know if the Red Wings are going to be able to re-sign him after this contract. He's going to make that $12 million that Nick's talking about somewhere. I'm not sure if it's going to be in Detroit, but he's going to make that kind of coin somewhere.
Right. Yeah. It's thank goodness now we can all move on. Training camp. Actually, I think the first exhibition game is Wednesday, as a matter of fact. So hockey season is almost upon us. Yeah. Where's the year gone? My goodness. I can't believe how this has flown by. And, again, our buddy Ken Cal is getting ready to start his season. So, all right. Let's move on. Our final topic du jour will be the Detroit Lions, who are now 2-1. They had since we last talked, they had a loss with the Bucs that drove everybody batty because they went 1 for 7 in the red zone. But yesterday they bounced back with a 20-13 win over the Cardinals, which drove some people batty because they went scoreless in the second half. But again, road win, any road win in the NFL is a good thing. I don't care how it comes by. And for that matter, the Lions were up 2 scores almost the entire second half. They had that game under control, especially the defense. But before we get into that, though, we need to talk about what's going on with Dan Campbell, who is selling his home as idiot fans have discovered where he lives, and I guess they're causing him problems. I'll go with you, Nick. You see idiot fans all the time. I take it on Twitter. It would not surprise me. Some of those idiots are the idiots that are causing Dan Campbell grief in his personal life.
I'm not surprised by that either. And I think I read somewhere where Dan Campbell's house was actually designed by Igor Larionov. And, so it used to belong to him. And but yeah, that's unfortunate that they find his house and then harass him because it's a sport. It's a sport. It's a game. It's fun. It's kind of demented that people should be harassing him at his house, and his team is good. So, which is it's an even bigger idiot fan. It's a shame that has to happen, and he's probably going to find something with more security, I guess. I would after this kind of thing, if it forces you to move. So that's too bad. That's really unfortunate.
Very much so. And Greg, I know I've read things about other coaches who have dealt this kind of stuff, but we're talking years and years ago where they weren't making the money that these coaches are now, and they just had to deal with these idiot fans, who would show up at their door or send them whatever, good or bad. And I just can't get over, or for that matter, I think it leads we were talking about social media a little bit ago. We were talking about Andy Dirks, who does it well, but it's kind of leads. I see the type of people who do this are probably the same type of people, Greg, who go on Twitter or Instagram, and they go right at players personally. I'm sure you see it on Twitter quite a bit, where someone makes a bad play, and idiots on Twitter, the replies to the poor guy's feed is nothing but bile and hate. And as Nick said, it's supposed to be fun in a game, and I just can't get over the way some people just their entire well-being seems to be revolve around a sporting event, which is bonkers to me.
Well, the other thing that you have to take into consideration is Dan Campbell is immensely popular in Detroit. I mean, he's easily the most popular Lions coach I've ever seen, and he eclipses Wayne Fonts. So Wayne had a kind of a niche crowd. He was beloved. He was also hated, but he was this kindly old chubby guy who was kind of cheerful. It was kind of hard to hate Wayne. You may not have liked him as a coach, but he wasn't, but Dan Campbell
he was a likable guy.
Right. Dan Campbell is immensely popular in this town. And even it just goes to show you that it doesn't matter how popular you are. This kind of shit can happen. The other thing too, I'm not blaming this on this, but this Pandora's box, guys, of betting. And you mentioned, Al, about, it's just a game. Well, it's not just a game when you've got $5,000 on the game, or it's not just a game when you're losing money left and right. It's not just a game when the coach goes for it on fourth down and because he doesn't make it, you're out money. And that's the element here that we didn't have to deal with before. And you get these nut jobs. There are always going to be nut jobs, always. But now you mix in the gambling thing. I'm not saying that's what caused this thing that happened with Campbell.
But you wouldn't be. I'm not surprised. It probably would be.
But it's another potential element of it brings out the worst in people, because now they're personally blaming the coach for losing money. It's one thing that I'm mad at the coach because my team lost. Okay, fine. But it's a different animal that I'm mad at the coach because I'm out $5,000 or whatever the case may be. The coach is taking money off my family's table because, well, no, I mean, that's stupid, but that's the way people think. And so this whole gambling thing, that we can do a whole segment, of course, on gambling.
Oh yeah.
I just feel like the gambling element now it's so overt in the NFL, and it's all, you can't get away from it. It's all, there's commercials left and right about all these DraftKings and all these other, betting apps and what have you, and they're trying to suck you in with free bets and, $50 on us and everything. And this is what you get these already wound up nut jobs who don't have anything at stake, really, other than the pride of their team. Now you throw in money. Now you're going to throw that into the mix for these nut jobs. And you don't think that something like this is going to happen? I'm surprised something like this hasn't already happened somewhere in the NFL. And I hope and I'm sorry for the Campbells to have to feel like they had to move. But this, I hope, is not going to be. We're not going to read a worse story later in the year about some special teams coach that's going to get because the other team ran back a punt to lose a game and a guy lost money on a. I mean, there's all sorts of weird elements now that are now in play because the NFL just couldn't keep their. They just had to have this gambling thing now. They just had to have it. Now look what they're doing. They're riling up these nut jobs. It's like giving nut jobs loaded guns and say, here's a loaded gun. I mean, it's just I can't. From the accounts that I'm reading in the Free Press, which, by the way, Free Press did a good job on this. Reading the accounts of what I'm seeing is that these were largely young kids, punks, who got out of hand. I'm not excusing it. But I don't think this was born out of a gambling thing. I don't think it was. But I'm just saying that you mix gambling now in with these crackpots who already take stuff way too seriously as it is. It's not a good. Nothing good can come from that.
Yeah,
Greg,
No, go ahead, Nick.
I was going to jokingly say the only other reason I could think of for guys like harassing Dan Campbell is because they lost money on a thing. I was going to say that jokingly, but it's not a joke. You're absolutely right. And, this is not like a theoretical conversation we're having here.
Right.
Because a few months ago, there was an article that came out about basketball coaches getting harassed.
Yes.
And their lives threatened. I held when Bickerstaff was the head coach in Cleveland, he was getting death threats because of gambling. Why did you do this in the game? You didn't beat the spread or shit like that. And that it's only a matter of time before it gets kind of really, even scarier and something actually happens, not just threats or somebody's pissed off that they lost $1,000 or whatever it is. It's only a matter of time before something ugly happens. Just in general, the higher the stakes are in these games. For me, it is. I'm just a fan. If they win, they win, great. If they don't win, I'm going to go do something else. A big deal.
One thing I do want to commend, though, and I know we drag the NFL a lot. Al and I, even before Nick joined the show, Al and I were constantly heavy critics of the NFL for a lot of reasons. But I have to admit, when I read this account on the Free Press, it looked like the NFL did a really good job stepping up to the plate in protecting the Campbell family. They mobilized. It seemed like there were processes in place. They worked with local authorities. They weren't a bystander in this whatsoever. So I got to give them credit. I may criticize them for bringing the gambling element in, but from what I'm reading, Al, I don't know if you read the same article I did. The NFL security team seemed to really be all over this, and that was I'm glad to see that, because you're going to need that, to Nick's point, before if something really ugly does happen. Right.
Well, and fandom is weird anyway, guys, in a way, because just while we were talking about the gambling aspect of it and the weird and how people act with this, I just what came to mind is the Chiefs super fan, the guy they called Chiefsaholic, who became a big deal on social media because he was all over. He would follow the team around and was, would have the best seats and all this kind of stuff for the games, and was all over social media. And it turned out, to keep that lifestyle, he was a serial bank robber, and he was just sentenced to 17 years and 6 months in the federal pen. So it's absolutely mind-boggling how people get their lives entangled with their fandom and how it affects their lives, either gambling or with this guy or whatever. So I hope to think we keep it at least kind of sane on this podcast. But yeah, it's crazy out there right now, just getting crazier. So, all right, let's get back to actual football. And Dan Campbell's football team, who is now 2-1. People are all up in arms about the offense, guys, but it really looks like offense is down around the league for the most part. There are some teams who are playing out of their minds offensively. The Vikings, the Saints are probably the two most prominent examples. But the Lions are in the exact same spot they were last year. They were 2-1, and they haven't played their best game. Easily have not played their best game yet, and they still have a winning record. And they pretty much they could argue easily they should be 3-0 with how badly they performed in the red zone against the Bucs. And I think the biggest standout of all this, Nick, is the Lions' defense for the most part. They held Kyler Murray in check. Everybody was worried about Kyler Murray last. He's going to run. How the Lions can't handle mobile quarterbacks. Though they kept him in check, he only ran for 45 yards and made him try to throw the ball. And the Lions dominated the entire game on defense for the most part.
If the Lions are a good team, they're going to win different ways every week. Mm-hmm. It's not all, it's kind of ridiculous to think just because they had a high-powered offense last year, that's just going to continue on. And there was a comment years ago that kind of stuck with me is At one point, the Tampa 2 defense was supposed to be a great defense, and then someone says, "Yeah, that'll last maybe a couple of years," but coaches figure out how to get around it and to work, to what do you call it? Just basically know how it ticks, and then it's not as effective of a defense.
Yeah, they're able to scheme for it
and change.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, exactly. You figure out how to work around the schemes. And, the Lions had a great offense last year, and, overall they were a high-scoring offense. If they come in with the same offense for this whole season, it's not going to be as effective. It's just there's too much at stake for the opponent to not prepare and figure out how to get around those offensive schemes or defensive schemes. Plus, who cares if they score 30 points in a game, or they score 15. They just have to score more than the opponent every game. And that can happen in many ways. Sometimes it's it's one of these special teams games where you're just kicking field goals, and that's what does it. Sometimes it's your defense getting pick sixes, or, picking up fumbles in the right place, just picking up a fumble and running it in. And other times it will be your offense. Plus, the other thing to remember about the Lions offense last year is they often played strong first halves and stunk in the second half. It happened all the time. Let's see, 49ers,
the third quarter, as people like to call it.
Yeah, so it's nothing new. So they kind of like fizzled in the second half. So that's part of the character of that team. They're the ones that have to figure out how to, not sort of go to in one extreme in the first half and then another extreme in the second half.
Right.
So,
and Greg, I think
wins and one loss.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. Yeah, and for the vast majority of the league is, the good team, most of the good teams, there's a couple undefeated teams, but 2-1, they're in fine shape. And Greg, I think this was the offense that I think everybody wanted to see from this team, is that, they had over 100 yards rushing for David Montgomery. I think Jahmyr Gibbs had like close to 90. And then Jared Goff made, when he needed to make a good throw, he made a good throw. Like we saw at the end of the game when they finally iced it with that third and long throw to Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then we got Ben Johnson at his best when they clinched the game on a naked bootleg from Jared Goff to get that clinching first downs. And then they were able to kneel out the game after that. So, I think this is maybe the Lions that we're going to see this year, Greg. A much better defensive team, and a team that is probably more leaning towards the ground and pound than an air raid.
Yeah, I think that's going to be their bread and butter is run first offense. They've got the offensive line to do it. They are a little bit. They don't have a big physical receiver right now. Maybe that's the one thing they don't have. They've got a really talented, fast guy in Williams, of course. They've got St. Brown, who's St. Brown, and they've got and then they got a bunch of kind of guys, Tim Patrick, who's still trying to find his way. Khalif Raymond, there's another little guy. They don't have a lot there after wide receiver wise after Williams, and because they lost Josh Reynolds, of course. So and Donovan Peoples-Jones didn't work out. So they don't have that big. They don't have a Justin Jefferson type guy or a Calvin Johnson type guy. They've got a lot of good, smaller guys and guys that can run past you and so forth. So I think they would prefer not to pass the ball 55 times like they did against Tampa.
That was a bit much. Yes,
and do more of what they did in Arizona for sure. Montgomery's a machine. It's amazing. The more I watch this guy, shame on me because I watched him twice a year when he played for the Bears, and I didn't know just how good this guy was. I really didn't know. And I watch him run, and it's amazing the yards he gained. We used to, marvel at Barry Sanders because Barry would get these, he would turn a 5-yard loss into a 2-yard gain, and that was amazing and whatever. But Montgomery, he gets positive yardage when I don't think there's positive yardage to be gotten. Even if it's just to get back to the line of scrimmage or to make, turn a no gain into 3-yard gain or a 3-yard gain to a 6-yard gain. He's really good at that. He's good in between the tackles. And I just marvel at this guy's running style the more I watch him play, and the way that he complements Gibbs and vice versa. What a weapon to have as the coordinator, be able to bring those guys in and not really miss a beat and give the defenses kind of a change of pace, kind of a look. But the great thing about both of those guys is that Montgomery can go outside and run past you, and Gibbs can run between the tackles. They can both do what the other can do, maybe not as well as the other guy can do, but they both can do that. And Gibbs doesn't get a lot of credit for running between the tackles. We think about him as an outside guy, a speed guy, but Gibbs himself can find holes and kind of shimmy his way through his linemen and get yardage as well. So I think they would much rather pound the ball like you said, and maybe we're going to see a lot more of these 20 to 27 point games as opposed to the Lions feeling like they have to win 38-31, which is what they seemed like they had to do a lot last year. And if we can get, the other interesting thing will be to see the development of Terry and Arnold, because obviously it's very clear that teams right now are picking on this kid. There were a couple of times at least where Kyler Murray, I don't think he was even trying to complete the pass. I think he was throwing it up there and trying to get a PI, and he's getting them. The refs right now are not Terry and Arnold's friend, but he's got to learn that. This is where the defensive back coach, I can't remember who it is, has got to be. This is where he comes into play, because we may make fun of position coaches, or there's too many position coaches, but this is where you need a position coach, because this is not college anymore. You can't do what Arnold can't do in the pros, what he could do in college. He can't get away. He can't get away with that stuff in the NFL. And he's learning right now. I think he's already got like 4 or 5 PIs called on him in the first 3 games, and they're all 20 to 30-yard gains. So they've got to clean that up. But having said all that, he settled down, I thought, as the game went on. He was still physical in with his pass defense. Defended, I should say, and they really didn't. Harrison did not have, Marvin Harrison did not have a game that jumps off the stat page. He really did. He caught the touchdown pass early, got a PI later, but Harrison was not the second coming of Jerry Rice in that game whatsoever.
Right. Yeah, and I guess also worth that we need to bring up, Nick, is that the Lions do have a possible Defensive Player of the Year on their roster with Aiden Hutchinson, who he looks even better this year because he had another sack. I believe I saw the stat. He has a sack in 5 consecutive games. He has 6.5 already this year. He had a 4.5 sack game against the Bucs where he just went ham on the Bucs right tackle. But that's the kind of stuff that the Lions are going to need this year if the offense isn't quite as high-powered as people are hoping.
First of all, I'm going to mention that, like, Hutchinson being a Wolverine, like I always love to see that, to be honest. But I am surprised he's as good as he is. I thought he'd be good and he'd be a solid, defensive end, but damn, he is getting better every single year, over the last 3 years. He's quite impressive. And I don't think I remember seeing that kind of thing out of a Lions team ever. I think the closest that I remember is like Robert Porcher. But it's nice to see that out of the, out of the Lions defense now. And I was thinking about this too. Like, Lions offense had to be high scoring last year because their defense stunk so much and gave up a lot of points. And if the defense is improved, that's less of a burden on the offense to score 35 to 40 points. Which is not a bad thing. And I think there's a little bit more of a balance. So I'm not worried about like a high scoring game. If the defense can hold other teams that improve over last year's defense, that's a lot of progress too. So
And we're talking about defense and also Jack Fox, Greg. It seemed like every time he had the ball, he was pinning the Cardinals inside the 10. Like he was just a machine yesterday, even though we still really haven't had a chance to see what Jake Bates can do. But he hasn't missed a kick yet, but he hasn't done anything long yet either.
Well, he missed an extra point.
Extra point, yeah, right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. John Madden had a great quote about Ray Guy. The Raiders, as you know, drafted Ray Guy with the first round draft pick, if you could believe that. They drafted a punter in the first round in 1973. Back at a time when punters were still kind of not specialists. You still had that was still at a time where quarterbacks were punters like Dan Pastorini, place kickers were punters like Don Cockcroft. You didn't really have pure. Lem Barney was a punter, for God's sakes. There wasn't really a lot of just punters back then. They drafted Guy, and it was soon evident why. The way this guy he was a weapon. And John Madden said, when we got Ray Guy, fourth down wasn't so bad anymore. And that's exactly what I'm seeing with Jack Fox.
Yeah.
When it comes down, because every football game, and you know this, there's a period of time where there's maybe 4 or 5 possessions in a row where it's a field position game. It's not necessarily about scoring a lot of points. Sometimes it's a battle of attrition. A lot of times the game is being played between the 20s. But then you get into that field position game where, especially if you're ahead and you're trying to keep field position. And a guy like Fox, you get to like the 40-yard line of the other team, around midfield. And you got a guy like Fox who can consistently drop punts inside the 10 or certainly inside the 20, but sometimes inside the 10, even if they're caught. That's okay. No return. Okay. When you get a guy like that who can do that consistently, that is a huge. Those kind of guys, that element of the game, that element of football, never gets enough credit. Never. It may get a lot of credit during the game. The announcers may talk, it's field position right now. But overall, during the course of an NFL season, I bet you there's 17 games. I bet you there's 170 minutes in a year where that field position game is crucial, because those field position that you're not really talking field position in the first half. You get in the second half of a football game, especially midway through the third quarter, early in the fourth. That field position becomes so important. When you got a guy like Fox, who's not kicking a bunch of touchbacks, that is very big. And I don't think I know the fans in Detroit like him. They know what he does. But I don't think in general that part of football gets enough publicity. Yeah,
exactly. And it's that's a great way to put it. I'm not so worried about fourth downs anymore because of that, that's a great quote. And I guess one other thing that's worth talking about with the Lions, Nick, is also time of possession with the Lions. People are upset about the offense, but every game they've pretty much dominated, except for the first game. They did lose the time of possession game against the Rams, but every game they have gotten better and better when it comes to running the clock and holding on to the ball. People were all up in arms about the Bucs game, but they still had 460-some yards of offense and dominated time of possession. It was just one of those fluky games, and they did the same thing yesterday. Even though they didn't score in the second half, they dominated possession, and I'm thrilled with that. I don't care if you have a lead, sit on the goddamn clock, and the Lions apparently are capable of doing that.
Yeah, I mean, that's, part of that comes with the running game too, right? I mean, that's what the running game helps with the time of possession, versus chucking the ball in the air, where a lot of other things can happen. And so I have no, and honestly, I don't want to fixate too much on time of possession, because you can have the ball all day long and still lose. So
we saw that against the Bucs.
So it's 3 games into the season. And a lot of good teams don't settle down until like a few games into the season. They could be kind of like hit or miss. They could be 2-2. I don't think Kansas City was that great. First 3-4 games into the season, their record wasn't like 4-0. But as the season progresses, the good teams will sustain, their winning record, and they'll get stronger, and their schemes will get refined. And so, hopefully that's what we're seeing with the Lions. So trying to do an analysis after 3 games is kind of maybe you don't want to overanalyze that kind of thing. So
yeah, exactly. It's the old Sparky Anderson. I'll tell you what I have after 40 games or whatever it is. Then I have a better idea. And Greg, when do we start getting worried about injuries? It was announced today that Marcus Davenport, the defensive end who has been starting for the most part across from Hutchinson, had a season-ending elbow injury. But again, shocker, Marcus Davenport has a history of missing a significant amount of time. That was one of those cheap flyers. I guess just didn't work. Holmes, and they have worked for Holmes in the past where he's gotten guys on the cheap, but this one didn't work out. But also, I think more alarming was that linebacker Derek Barnes, who was carted off the field yesterday, suffered a knee injury, and they're not calling it season-ending, but they did say he will miss significant time. Brian Branch and Alex Anzalone are both in concussion protocol. Aleem McNeil hurt his shoulder, didn't return to the game yesterday, even though most of these guys are day-to-day other than the first 2. And, of course, also Sam Laporta got his leg rolled up. I saw that on that great hook and lateral, or hook and ladder, whatever you want to call it. But he got his leg rolled up, sprained his ankle, so he is gimpy at the moment. I know the NFL is more, if anything, Greg, a league of attrition. I know people were upset that the Lions were going to have a bye week after week during week 5. Honestly, it looks like it's going to be at the perfect time for a team that's already getting beat up.
Well, they were getting beat up in practice
this year. That's right. Yeah,
they were dropping like flies in training camp before they even hit anybody else. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's the league. It's a very violent game. That Brian Branch hit. I was walking my wife.
Yeah, that was nasty. Game. Yes. And
even my wife, who's not a huge football fan, but she's like a casual fan, even she was, oh my God, that looked bad. I said, yeah, I know that was really, both. It's just such a
they both left the field. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
they were both
such a violent game, and but a lot of these injuries, though, that's what's funny about the NFL. These injuries we're talking about aren't necessarily because of violence. I mean, not because of violent play. It's just the nature of the game. You get a leg caught somewhere, you get rolled over. You get, you twist something. A lot of these injuries.
That's Evan Laporta.
Right. Exactly. There are some injuries that, even when you watch the replay, you don't know really what happened. It's like, well, how did he get hurt? Where's the injury? I'm not seeing it. Because you don't know what the human body's going through when you're playing a professional football game. These injuries we're talking about aren't all, graphic, Joe Theismann type injuries we're talking about here. They're just injuries that happen during the course of playing football that you may not even notice until you see a guy not on the field anymore. And you got to get a report from the sideline. Oh, so-and-so's out with the sprained knee. Well, where? I didn't see it happen. You don't know when these things happen. And or even the next day, you watch the entire game and maybe the guy's on the field all 60 minutes and the coach steps up to the podium on Monday and says, so-and-so's got a knee, he'll be out for a couple of weeks. Well, when did that happen? I didn't see that. That's the way it is in the NFL. It's the way the game is. It's not all injuries are overt where you see them right away and say, oh, he's injured. Well, the Brian Branch play, yes, of course. But in the Laporta play, yes. But a lot of these other plays, when you see a guy in the field and they show the replay, it's not always immediately evident why they got hurt.
Right, exactly. But next week, Monday Night Football, Seattle, Nick, is I believe in Detroit. It could be a wild week next week with Monday Night Football and then a possible Tigers in a playoff game on Tuesday. I don't think anybody saw that that back-to-back thing happening
there. We've had little to root for with Detroit teams in the last several years, so it's like trying to get used to them having like something to play for is still it feels foreign lately. But so I didn't look at the schedule. So they're playing in Detroit.
I believe they are in Detroit next Monday night. Yeah.
Didn't they play the Seahawks in Detroit the last 3 times that those two teams played?
Yes, and lost every damn
time. They don't like alternate somehow.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a weird scheduling quirk, but it's that's the NFL for you. But I'm sure it'll be a very entertaining game because that's the one thing. Seahawks-Lions games are always close and they're always entertaining. And like I said, they always seem to lose to them. But yeah, but it's But honestly, I'm glad it's on Monday night, Greg, because I'll be able to watch it because I'm headed home Sunday. I lose track of days when I'm up here. Right. I'm headed home Sunday, and because the Bucs game I had to follow on my phone. I wasn't going to make Linda listen to the Lions game. She hates doing that, so I just had to follow on my phone. At least I'll be able to watch the game Monday night, and then I'm flying out to Florida Tuesday morning. So at least I'll be able to see the game. But Monday Night Football in Detroit, and the place is going to be lit. Between the Red Wings I think people are happy how things are with the Red Wings. The Tigers are playing out of their minds. Now they got the Lions, the Super Bowl contenders. Let's just not even think about the Pistons. I guess that's the only way to put it. It's funny, like they're off in the corner eating paste or something like these other teams are having fun.
Oh, boy.
Pistons, what sport is that?
Yeah. Anything you guys like to add before we kind of hit the home stretch here and start wrapping things up? But we all set to go.
I think we're all set to go.
I think we're all set
to go. All right. So that means it's time for our jerk of the week. Nick, you get to go first. Who's your jerk?
All right. This is kind of somewhat benign, but it's like really irritating. And my jerk of the week is Bill Belichick.
You
know where I'm going with this one, right? Yeah. So apparently he made this wise observation. It has to do with Matt Patricia and his time as the Lions head coach. And Belichick had this to say. It's like, that's something that Matt Patricia started. And now they're kind of getting the fruits of the labor from him. And this has to do with the play of the Lions' offensive line, which I saw this posted on Twitter, and Lions fans were quick to call bullshit on this one, and they were damn right about this. I think the only player on that offensive line, or maybe even on the team, that was drafted during the time of Patricia was Ragnow, their center, who is actually a very good player. But none of the other guys came in during Patricia's time. And you remember, Patricia took a 9-7 team and drove it straight into the ground.
Yep.
So I don't know what sort of – and I don't understand that relationship between Patricia and Belichick.
You're right.
Not.
I agree. I agree with you there. Yeah.
Patricia has got to have some serious dirt on Belichick. To come back to the Patriots, be given the role of offensive coordinator and do lousy and continue to be offensive coordinator the year after that. Like, I just don't get it. It's the most bizarre thing to me. Like, I thought Belichick had much more sense, was much more cold-hearted than that. But so I don't get it at all.
I don't either. I don't either.
And so making a stupid comment like this, like Patricia did anything good in his time in Detroit is beyond me.
Well, I don't know. It was so gratuitous. There was no reason to go there. I mean, it wasn't really like, I don't know why he felt, I know what you're saying about the relationship between he and Patricia is odd to begin with, but I don't know why he felt like he had to go kind of out of his way to compliment Patricia, and that's what that was. That was going out of his way to put praise on Patricia, where obviously none was warranted. I don't understand the motivation there either. It's odd for sure.
It was a weird thing. I know both of them now are going to be on some sort of sports network related to betting, actually.
Right. Yeah.
To be honest, and.
Yeah.
So, and he probably had to justify having Patricia on there and seeming like an expert is my only guess. And like, I don't know what the hell he's an expert in, but because he was one shitty head coach for sure. And he wasn't that much better as an offensive coordinator.
No.
So I don't know.
Good call.
Somebody's high or somebody's got dirt on somebody else. But
like I texted you guys, the only thing that Patricia built in Detroit was that goddamn that hill to run up of in the practice facility. And that was it. But and what is with Belichick, who treated the media as essentially this necessary evil, where he hated them essentially? He's gone all in on becoming a media guy. It's money, I guess, but whatever. Yeah. Right. Anyway, Greg, who is your jerk of the week?
I'm going to go to the Detroit Lions, but as an organization, not for anything they're doing on the football field. We lost, as you know, the great Joe Schmidt about a week and a half ago.
Yeah.
Greatest, maybe me, and with all due respect to Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson, Bobby Lane, maybe the greatest Lion of all time. Certainly in the Mount Rushmore of Lions, for sure.
Yeah.
And apparently, unless I've missed it, the Lions aren't putting a 56 patch on their jersey, and they're not putting a 56 sticker on the helmet. Yeah. And I find that reprehensible. If any other team in the NFL lost a player in their history that meant as much to that team's history as Joe Schmidt means to the Lions' history, and didn't put a patch on the jersey or a sticker on the helmet, I would be trashing that organization as well. And shame on the Detroit Lions, shame on Rod Wood, unless I've either missed something or they've got something planned that they haven't announced. They've played now one game already without. I mean, Joe has been dead for a little while now, and they've already played at least one game for sure, if not two, without anything. There should be a patch on the jersey. There should be a sticker on that, something that's got 56 on it. It's ridiculous. And every time I think that the Lions might be getting out of that, that morass of lack of class, and shame on shame on Sheila. She should know better. Rod Wood should know better. They just went through this with Calvin Johnson. They've gone through it with Barry Sanders. They got both of those guys back into the fold because they wanted to be back in the fold, not anything the Lions did, because Calvin wanted back in, Barry wanted back in on their own volition. That was almost gratuitous, charitable what they did for the Lions, and now they're going to take Joe Schmidt, who's one of the greatest Lions has ever played, and not acknowledge him, not put a 56 on the jersey, not put a 56 on the helmet. That's shameful. Absolutely ridiculous. And I'm pissed off about it. Pissed. They should be doing something about that. It's ridiculous. Joe Schmidt means more to the Lions than any of those assholes that they've honored before. And he should be. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely fucking ridiculous.
I can see the steam coming from your ears, Greg.
The irony is they still have William Clay Ford's initials on the jerseys, and he died, 10 years ago at this point?
Don't get me going on that. Yeah, Greg, didn't he leave the team on kind of bad terms when he quit as a coach?
Well, don't they all?
Yeah, but the thing is, though, he wasn't fired. He quit.
No, he quit. Well, it's funny because we were just talking about Dan Campbell earlier. Joe quit for three reasons. He got tired of losing the power struggle with Russ Thomas to Bill Ford.
Right.
And he got tired of the media, and he got tired of the fans. He said, I told my wife that when coaching wasn't fun anymore, I'd stop. And it's not fun anymore, so I'm stopping. And he never went back into it. He went into private business, was very successful as a businessman. And the other thing he did too, by the way, that Schmidt did, that they should thank him for, that he let Pat Swilling wear 56 when the Lions signed Swilling in 1993. Swilling, who wore 56 with the Saints, wanted to wear 56 with the Lions, and now Swilling should never have made that request to begin with. The Lions, once the request was made, should have shut it down. But of course, and they asked Schmidt, if Schmidt was put on the spot, and they sort of, if he says no, he's going to look like a jerk. So he said, yeah, he can wear it. But privately, he said, I was very offended by that. They should never have asked me for that. That put me on the spot publicly. I was put in a no-win situation. When freaking TJ Hawkinson, a rookie, wanted to wear 88, again, the Lions said, okay, fine. And the Charlie Sanders family, rightfully, was ticked off. They went public and said, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing here? Charlie Sanders is a Hall of Famer. He's dead now. And now you're going to let this rookie who hasn't caught a pass wear my dad's number?
Mm-hmm.
Are you fucking insane? They can't. I don't know what it is. They can't. I don't know what it is about that organization. Even with its on-field success, and even with Sheila making some good moves, they still are completely clueless when it comes to honoring their team's legacy. I don't understand it. They've pissed off Barry. They've pissed off Calvin. They've pissed off Joe Schmidt. They've pissed off Charlie Sanders' family. Why? Why? It's all this stuff is completely avoidable. I don't understand where they get off. And I don't want to hear about the Ring of Honor and the roar, whatever they call that thing in Ford Field that they honor these people with. And I don't want to hear about Calvin and Rodwood making up and everything's hunky dory now, because that's all Calvin Johnson anyway, by the way.
Yeah.
This is another example of the Lions just being completely classless to players of their own history, and I don't understand why.
Yeah. Yeah, no argument there, not at all. And it's don't get me going on the WCF initial thing. That always ticked me off. So and the fact that it's still there, oh god. Anyway, my jerk of the week. We're gonna let Greg a couple minutes to cool down here. I'm gonna go with Washington Nationals shortstop C.J. Abrams. And this is kind of up Greg's gambling alley here. He was sent to the minors after he was caught on social media doing an all-nighter at a Chicago casino. He was spotted in the casino. They were playing the Cubs, and obviously when you're in Chicago, you play day games often against the Cubs. He was spotted in a Chicago casino at 8 a.m. in the morning. Right. And they had a 2 p.m. game. Right. So, when it was announced, it was like they called it an internal issue. They didn't say it was because he was in a fucking casino for 12 hours all night. But it was because it came out pretty quickly that people had saw him in the casino, posted it on social media. The kid was busted, and as he's not being sent to the minors. What's funny is he's being sent as punishment. He's being sent to their complex in Florida to work out for the final week of the season. It's like I guess they're going to have him run laps or write on the chalkboard. I will not gamble. I don't know, but it's a $30,000 mistake. That's what he's losing in salary, and obviously there's the embarrassment of the whole damn thing. But once again, Greg, there's your gambling thing. He's 23 years old. He'll likely bounce back from this. I'm sure this is because 23-year-olds, we were all 23 at one point. We're all boneheads at that age. But man, that's an expensive, silly lesson to learn. Especially nowadays. I mean, back in the day, of Bobby Lane, where the legendary stories of him drinking all night and quarterbacking the Lions that afternoon. Well, there was no such thing as social media, and you didn't have, and the reporters were buddy, and they didn't really report that stuff. You can't hide that stuff today. If you're gonna be in a casino 8 a.m, it's gonna be found out pretty darn quickly, and we found that out. So my jerk of the week is C.J. Abrams, who made not only a losing bet, but it ended up a betting that cost him $30,000.
Yeah,
all right. One. Yes, it's amazing. I have nothing else to say. All right, with that, I guess it's time to wrap things up. So, as usual, Greg, why don't you do your shout outs, thank yous, and let people know where to find us on social media and who may be coming up.
Absolutely. We'll be back with you. I think, Al, maybe not the 7th of October. I think we're going to delay that.
I'm going to be in Florida.
Yeah, so maybe we may be coming at you a couple days later than that. We'll have to wait and see. But
that's right.
We do know on October 21st.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
We do know on October 21st, though, comedian John Wing, fun guy. I think you'll like him. We'll be bringing him back on. The thing about John is we don't know what we're talking about. I mean, we talking Toronto, Detroit, comedy, who knows? But that'll be kind of a nice change of pace for us. That's on the 21st. We get closer to the beginning, the tip-off of the NBA season. We'll probably bring City Hall back on, maybe November 4th. Right after the season starts, we'll do that. But meanwhile, follow me on Twitter /X at Greg Eno. Subscribe to my Substack, gregeno.substack.com. I'll come into your inbox every Monday, and sometimes more than that. And of course, I want to thank my lovely wife Sharon for putting up with this nonsense every other week, and for you guys, to make Monday night so gosh darn.
Yeah, and Nick, anything you want to promote or tell people where to find you on social media?
Yep, my one and only place is Twitter, and I'm still going to call it that. I'm at Nick Milanovich. There's a bunch of us always exchanging messages about Detroit sports. It was actually a lot more fun when the team sucked. Actually, the exchanges got a lot more fun. I gotta say, but at the same time, I prefer the Detroit teams winning more. But come and join us, have a friendly conversation. Disagreeing is fine. Name calling and personal attacks are not. We've had that a couple times lately. Please don't. We just want to keep it fun for everybody. It's sports. We're fans. We're all irrational in some way, and just enjoy the fun of rooting for our Detroit teams.
Exactly. And it is weird hanging on every pitch again. It's been a long time since I've been able to do that. So, as always, we'd like you to please like, share, and subscribe if you're a fan of the podcast. Like I said, spread the word. Let us know what you think. Every little bit helps. And of course, if you want to subscribe, we're available any place podcasts are found. Just do a search for the Knee Jerks Podcast. You'll find us on places like Apple Podcast. We're on YouTube Music, iHeartRadio. We're on Spotify. We're on Amazon Music. We're on Deezer. We're on Radio Public. We're on Ghana. Our homepage is thekneejerks.net. That's where you'll find the links to all our social media, anything we're talking about, links to guests. You can also download the MP3 right from there, put it right on your phone or laptop or whatever, and listen to it there. And give a shout out to Linda, who is over in the fifth wheel right now, giving me my space here in the cabin so I can yell at you guys for 2 hours and listen to Greg just go to town on the Lions again. That's always fun. And other than that, I think it's about time to wrap things up. So we'll be back in approximately 2 weeks, and we'll have lots of football to talk about. The Wings will be ready to go. So the Pistons will be in training camp, and hopefully playoff baseball. Fingers crossed. So with that, let's get the hell out of here. So until this time in approximately 2 weeks, this is Al Beaton saying good night, good evening, good luck, and aloha, along with Nick Milanovich.
Good night, everybody.
And of course, Greg Eno.
Ciao, Italy. We'll see you in 2 weeks and some change.